So now the question is, how does innovation look today? We heard about how innovation looked in 1965, which was bold and based on a lot of talent and based on taking some dramatic risks, I think. I mean, it sounded like a real shift in the business that Roy Clay explained to us. And so today, the dynamics are different. Today, a lot of people are doing a lot of things, and the tools are opening up. They're much easier to access than they were. And of course, there's a lot more development to be done as well. So right now in our afternoon session, Ariel Haney and Travis Yu are going to start talking about what it takes to build an app from paper to iPad. And so we wanted to acknowledge that they came over here from the School of Information and are just about to graduate. So congratulations on that. And thanks for joining us to explain your process.
Hi, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Ariel, and this is Travis, and we're both second-year students at the School of Information at UC Berkeley. And this semester, we developed and led a class on prototyping. And today, in 30-ish short minutes, we're going to do our best to sort of give you a sense of what prototyping is, like why you should prototype, how to start. Maybe we'll have time for a quick prototyping exercise, and then we'll talk a little bit about working in Keynote, which is a really great mobile prototyping tool. And then at the end, there'll be some time for questions. And if at any point while we're speaking, you have any questions yourselves or comments, those are definitely welcome. So just thanks. Let us know. And great. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So how many of you have experienced prototyping? Okay, great. So this might be a little bit of review for you, but if you have stuff to add, please let me know. So first I wanted to start with what the definition of what a prototype is. Actually, I have 3 for you today. The first is it's a representation of a design made before the final solution exists. The second, it's producing early working versions of the future application system and experimenting with them. And the third, the means by which designers organically and evolutionarily learn, discover, generate, and refine designs. So I think this image really gets to the heart of why prototyping is important and what it really is. So on the left, you see the person sort of generating ideas. They have all these ideas in their head. And then they make them concrete. They make them tangible. They make them visible. And this really serves the purpose for allowing them to communicate with other people. It's not just something in their heads, sort of amorphous, but they can actually have it there, make sure that the idea works for themselves. It's actually feasible once it's in a medium. And then, even more importantly, it allows them to communicate effectively with potential users and have those users give them feedback. Because, as you might know, everything that makes sense in your head doesn't necessarily make sense to other people's heads. So it's really important to have validation on that. And once you do have feedback, and a lot of that might not be great, you can take that feedback into consideration, modify your ideas, create another prototype, shoot them back to your users, and iterate slowly and slowly until you have a product that really works and is really great. I want to talk a little bit about fidelity. So there's a whole range of types of fidelity of prototypes you can create. On the low fidelity end, there's something as simple as a paper prototype. And then on the high fidelity end are things more like Keynote, which we'll talk a little bit more later on in the presentation. And the great thing about low fidelity prototypes is that they're really quick, really easy to make. They don't require a huge cost or even a huge amount of skill. If you can draw a line, if you can draw a box, you can make a low-fidelity prototype. They're also really great because they don't look like they took a ton of time to create, and so your users are much more likely to give you honest feedback about them. If the user doesn't understand your prototype or thinks it's a crazy idea, they're much more likely to say, like, this is a crazy idea, this doesn't make any sense to me. So that's really great. On the other hand, with high-fidelity prototypes, these might look like they took you a really long time to make and that they're almost a finished product, and so people might be more hesitant to just tell you, you know, this doesn't make any sense, I don't get this. They might work a lot harder to try to use the product itself. The other thing about high-fidelity prototypes is that they do take a lot more time to make. Even if you're using a bunch of tools and technologies that sort of make it pretty simple to make, there's nothing as quick as just for drawing lines on a piece of paper. And it also there's more of a learning curve with high-fidelity prototypes. The great thing about high-fidelity prototypes is that your users, they can be high enough fidelity that your users actually think that they are a working product, which can be great because then you really get a sense of how your user will interact with your final product. It'll mimic the look and feel of that product, and so you'll get a really great sense of what the experience with your final product will actually look like. All right, so how do you start prototyping? Number one, you need an idea. You need to know what exactly you want to prototype. And if there's a particular use case you want to prototype. So for example, if you say, oh, I want to make a camera application, you need to think about what aspect of that camera application do you want to prototype. Do you want to prototype that action where the user presses the take picture button? Do you want to prototype maybe a filter capability? Do you want to prototype both? But really be clear about what your intention is for that prototype. So number two, you want to start sketching. And again, I think this is best done with paper, not with any sort of technology, technology being your pen and paper, rather than a computer program. And the reason for this is that it's just really cheap, easy. You can cross it out. You don't feel bad about it. You don't get as locked in when it's just a piece of paper. And then three, you really want a storyboard. So when you're creating applications and mobile applications, it's not just about one screen. It's not just about your home screen. It's really about what is the user doing with this application. Why is the user coming to my application? So so you need to think about what you want them to do with it. All right. So at this point, if we have time, I don't know. It would be great if everyone just took out a piece of paper and a pen. If you don't have one, maybe your neighbor does. And if you could just quickly sort of prototype a mobile app that allows you to call a trusted friend or mentor when you're in an emergency situation. And down at the bottom, you can see examples of 2 paper prototypes that people did in our class this semester. And you can see they're just really quick line drawings. And another thing I want to mention about mobile prototyping is that it's really great sometimes to use note cards, like 3x5 cards, because they're the same shape as a mobile phone. And it's really easy to sort of put them in front of a user and slide one in front of them, and then another, and then another. I'll just give you guys a couple minutes to do that so you can get a sense. OK, great. So now that you all have a little bit of a sense of what it's like to start with your paper prototype, once you have that, you get some user feedback, and you want to take it to the next level. You want to start to create a hi-fi prototype. One of the tools that's really great to use, especially for mobile, is Keynote. For those of you who don't know, Keynote is a presentation application developed by Apple. I'm using it for this presentation. But it's also a really fantastic prototyping tool for reasons I'll talk about in a minute. But first, I want to give you a sense of what it can do in terms of prototyping mobile applications. So this is a mock-up of a BART application that was developed in Keynote. And you can actually download this on your mobile phone actually it's on Travis's phone right now. You can export it as a PDF and actually put it on your mobile phone, so it's the same form factor. And then these buttons that I'm about to show you, actually, Travis, could you sort of, if you hover over the bottom nav where it says favorites, near me, and lines, you'll see there's a little finger pointer that shows up because those are linked. And if it was on your phone, you'd actually be able to press the button on your phone. So if you want to press favorites, it says you don't have any favorites yet. Click OK. Brings you back to the home screen. You can see that there's a 16th Street and Mission BART station near you. You can press that. It brings you to a page which shows when the incoming trains are arriving. You can go back from there, back to the home screen, and then look for a specific line. And it shows you a list of lines. You can choose one of those. Yeah. And again, shows you the times that the trains are arriving. So if you can imagine this actually being on a device, you can imagine it being really, really similar to the way that the actual application might look and behave. So now we will show you what is going on under the hood, how these prototypes are made. Oh, and just to reiterate, the way you put it on your phone is by exporting it as a PDF. And then using a PDF viewer on the phone to open it. You can use any PDF viewer, so it works cross-platform. Even though it's developed on Apple, you can view it on both iPhones and Android phones. There is a specific iPhone application developed specifically for viewing mobile prototypes called Kinetopia. The benefits of this are that it's just developed specifically for it. The drawbacks are that it's only for iPhone. The other benefit of Kinetopia is that it actually has a bunch of mobile templates. So instead of having to create all of the assets from scratch, like the nav bars and the pins, you can. A lot of those are created for you in Kinetopia. So go to the next slide. And actually, if we escape, okay. So, oh no. One second. No. All right. So, here. So if you can see, sort of all of these different assets are actually from Kinetopia, so they were developed for me. I didn't have to go into Illustrator and mock them up. So if you don't have fantastic Photoshop or Illustrator skills, it's a really great library. See, like this is the map. You can also really drag anything in here. If you find something even on the internet, you just can drag it in here as an image file. You can take assets from other prototyping tools like Balsamiq, and just sort of make it your own. So a couple of things I want to point out is that there's this menu down here, and then there's this title section up here, and then the phone's time and battery up here. And these are fixed elements throughout each page. So the elements on this page are the same as on the next page. And the way that you do that is you use something called a master slide. So if you click into here, you'll see that this slide has the top and the bottom nav, and those stay constant, which is a really great thing to use because that way your image is always centered and it's not going to be jumping around on page to page, and it'll look like much more professional and seamless. The other thing I want to show you is how to create, basically to link your prototype up. So to do that, you use the inspector, which is this toolbar right here. And you click on the element you want to link, and then you go to this menu option with the circle and the arrow. Click on it. Right, it's already clicked. Enable as hyperlink. And then you have to specify what slide you want it to link to. So in this case, you can see I'm on slide 18, and I know that I want to link it to 19. So I just type in 19. Now I see there's a little hyperlink here. And then if I view this keynote, when I click on it, it goes to the right page. So if you have a series of slides, you can imagine just building a series of hyperlinks and having them crisscross each other to create the experience you want. Yep. Okay. So just the last thing I wanted to do is just sort of give you a list of tool options. There's some free libraries with assets as well. And yeah, if you guys have any quick questions, happy to answer them. Yeah. And I'm sure we can send this out to you guys.
We're going to share those slides.
Yeah, and yeah, and I would say the best way to learn how to do this stuff is just to sort of look at somebody's and take it apart and see what they did.
So can I do a slideshow like this, put it on my phone, and take it to Kleiner Perkins and get $1 million startup funds? Is that going to work?
I mean, I think it depends on what the idea is.
Yes, in principle, that would be enough to get us through the door, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So prototyping is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it uses a lot less resources than actually coding something. I mean, you can get a pretty good idea of what the look and feel of the actual product will be.
So can you send it to India and have coders in India develop it for you when you're done?
That's a great idea.
Do that, yeah.
Yeah, you can do that too, yeah.
No? I don't know. It's global workforce. Any other questions?
Maybe we can have some of the students who are youth radio and produce it for you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Turn out to be a little more authentic again. Yeah. So India, Oakland, we could do it right here too. We can also learn how to do it ourselves. That's kind of the next step. So let's thank Travis and It is now my honor to introduce two very special guests, Elijah Butterfield and Spencer Butterfield. Elijah and Spencer are two young men who have developed their understanding of how to develop software for iPhones and iPads on their own in homeschooling processes. And so I wanted to see if we could learn from you what kinds of tools are out there to go from the prototype that we just saw to an actual application and to make even a 3D modeled game that would go on an iPhone, for example. So please welcome Elijah and Spencer Butterfield, and we'll hear from them.
How much time do we have? We have 10 minutes. Okay.
Testing. Okay. 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 As was said, I'm Spencer Butterfield, and this is my brother Elisha Butterfield, and we're co-founders of the company Digital Art Assets. We do 2D and 3D animation, apps, games. Sorry, I've never used one of these before. Assets, concept art, storyboards, character design, 3D models, and Maya training. And we'll go over some of the animations we've done in 3D. So the first one was done by Elisha. It's called Cooking Skeleton Girl. Oh, sorry, Chili Posh. Wrong. Sorry, I changed the order.
This is style. This is elegance by the mile. posh, posh, travelling life, the travelling life for me. First cabin in captain's table, regal company. Whenever I'm bored, I travel abroad, but ever so properly. Forward am, starboard am, posh with a capital P-O-S-H, posh.
So, Elisha, do you want to explain a little bit about that? That was done. Sorry. Believe it or not, that accounts for months of work and a lot of time. And it's quite very complicated process. You start out with, well, this is actually a scene from a movie, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And so you start out with your concept art, and then going through the process of making each character, then making a skeleton for the character so that it can move around, then animating it so that you can bring it to life. Yeah. So I'm going to go over to our next animation, Cooking Skeleton Girl, which actually was seen and got us invited to a tour of Industrial Lights and Magic. So that was a real treat. This was done several years ago. So the next animation I'm going to show is based off Charlie Chaplin, a scene from a Charlie Chaplin movie titled The Kid. And it accounts for months of work and well over hundreds of hours. So here it is. So quickly, I'm going to go over the process. I was able to take screenshots through the whole development cycle. So first thing is concept art. So before you actually start getting deep in the process of development, planning's the number one thing. So that's some early concept art right there. And from there, I went straight into modeling in the 3D modeling program Maya. So that's a very early model of the body. A little further along, notice how it's cut in half. That's a neat little trick that I learned, that if you cut the body in half and then duplicate it and reverse, you don't have to model both sides of the body. Early modeling of the head. A little further along, notice how I'm using the concept art and still from the actual film as a basis for the proportions of the model. Get a little further along in the process, so modeling the head, and the next slide will show the smoothing process of how it looks more like it does in the actual film. And there's the whole body, almost completely done. And the last part, and it accounts for half the time of development, is rigging. So actually controlling the character is one of the most difficult processes. Just that the bone structure took about a month to create, and technical difficulties are very prevalent in this process, so it was very difficult. And just to show the final product one more time. And next we're going to go into some 3D assets. These were developed by Elisha.
these were all done in Maya as a side project of mine. So.
The next video shows assets in the city. So bicycles and dumpsters, you know, stuff you see around San Francisco, for instance. Okay, so next we get into the funnest part, gaming. So you'll probably recognize the character. So this is a level made using the Unreal 2 engine. Elijah designed it. It's called Legoland Capture the Flag. Has individual Legos modeled, and they have dynamic physics. So rockets explode Lego houses. That's really fun. Next is a level I created called Bubble Wrap Village. It's based inside a cardboard box. So it is made of cardboard, packing material, and Legos. And the final level I want to show is Steampunk Factory. So this was the latest level I did. It has lots of objects that move. So it's pistons and gears and, you know, just a lot. It's a very busy level that happens to look really good. It's kind of dark, but it was a lot of fun to make, and modeling the gears was awesome. And here's our first mobile game that was released this last holiday season, titled Holiday Toy Drop. Celebrates Hanukkah, Christmas, and Kwanzaa, so it's all-inclusive. And you're a black Santa, and your goal is to drop as many presents as you can into chimneys. Took about 6 weeks to develop. This was after over a year of making apps and such, so we were primed and ready for the actual process of this. But artwork was done by us. Took over 2,000 of lines of code in order to get really functional. And right now it's available for download on the Android market. And we also have it working on iPad, Kindle Fire, and Nook. And last thing we want to touch on is the accessibility of the new digital media industry. So for our 3D, for our apps and games, we use Corona SDK. But one thing, if you notice, that all these programs come in one form or another that's free. And almost all apps you see on the App Store are made either using Corona, Cocos, Unity, Xcode, or Android SDK. And they're all readily available. And for instance, Corona SDK is free. You can create a full app on all platforms. You just have to pay $199 a year if you want to publish it. Cocos 2D, equally as powerful, but is completely free and open source. Unity is the most popular multi-platform 3D game engine. And a lot of people, it's a misconception. A lot of people think that 3D games cost a lot of money to make because of the software. Like Maya, which is 3D modeling suite, costs $5,000. But there are free alternatives that are equally as powerful. For instance, Blender, which is free and open source, and Photoshop. There's an alternative for that. GIMP, equally as powerful and actually preferred over Photoshop, and Text Wrangler, which is I use for code editing. And then the last two are the most popular because they're the most well-known. Xcode, which is developed by Apple. But the only downside is that it is single platform, so when you develop on iOS, it's going to stay there. You're not going to be able to port easily to to Android, for instance. And same with Android SDK. It is open source, well, by Google standards of open source, but that's also single platform. So one thing I just wanted to really say is that these tools are out there, and it's really just how much resolve you have in what you want to do. For instance, creating games or apps. So these programs can run on a computer that's a decade old. So the library is the best friend. They have coding books and app books. And there's plenty of free training online. So anyway, that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for having us.
Very compelling, thank you. So now we have a complete suite from paper prototype to 3D modeling presented by Elijah and Spencer Butterfield and by Ariel earlier. It's really quite compelling. Thanks. So we're ready to make an app now based on that. So step one would be to download some of the software, right? So you have to download, say, Unity to start working with this kind of thing, right? Yeah. So what's the first step if you want to say go home and do something right now like I did? What would you do?
Well,
Just don't press it.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're entirely self-taught in terms of app building and 2D games, but we have taken college classes in 3D animation and design for years now. But we're coding. There are tutorials online on all these subjects, all free. So if you really want to learn, then all you have to do is buckle down and really watch these things. It's really easy to get distracted, but I set a goal. So our holiday toy drop, that was a real, the heat was on that. Our dad wanted us to make a game for Christmas release, and it was only 6 weeks before Christmas. And we've never made a game before, so how were we possibly going to do that when we had no experience making games? And the reality was we just had to buckle down, really buckle down, and watch tutorials, stay up till 4 in the morning, I don't know, at least half the nights we were developing, and we got it done. So.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes, otherwise, okay.
I think I got it here, right? Okay. So, yeah, you guys are very impressive, and your dad is here too. Where is he? Yeah. Oh, good, great, fair. Thanks, man. So, yeah, I was going to ask you about the homeschooling. Do you think you would have been as accomplished if you had gone to regular high schools?
I think not. The great thing about homeschooling is that it really lets us define who we want to be without any peer pressure or outside influences. Plus, we had plenty of, our schedule is flexible. So we want to take college classes that would normally be in school hours. We can go to Diablo Valley College and take class at 1 o'clock or 8 in the morning of such and get back to schoolwork later. But the mentality we've learned is just we can do whatever we want. And, it's worked out extremely well. So, we really can do whatever we want as long as we really buckle down.
So I got another question. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm going to ask you guys, how old are you?
I just turned 17 this month.
Wow. And your brother?
15.
15. You guys are on your way.
Thank you.
Great job, thank you. Our next presentation is going to be by Helen Milner, and we're going to take a 10-minute coffee break so you can stretch your legs, get some coffee, and do your bio breaks, and we'll set up with Helen Milner. So looking forward to seeing you shortly.